I'm Frank Vaughn. It's November 28th, 2025, and I'm coming in hot today. We're only going to talk about one thing and one thing only, and that is Danielle Smith's betrayal of the people of Alberta and her complete surrender to Ottawa, Mark Carney, Brookfield, the corruption, all of it through this, what everybody's calling, pipeline deal. First off, the Memorandum of Understanding is not a pipeline deal. It is a tax deal. There's a pipeline talked about, but it's a fantasy pipeline. There's no guarantee that pipeline will ever be built. It is dependent entirely on the net zero nonsense that Mark Carney is the author of, the man who benefits from it. Do you realize we have a system set up in Canada where all the losses that are inevitable from all of this green energy scam stuff, all this carbon capture nonsense, is going to be picked up by the taxpayer? They will make their money, and then they will run for the exit, and all of us will be left on the hook for it. And Danielle Smith was more than happy to stand on a stage with this man, smiling in a room full of SEALs as they clapped like they got something out of this deal. The pipeline will never be built. Let's put that on the record right now. The pipeline will never be built. Yeah, it's true. Mark Carney said that natives don't have a veto, but he's not really in a position to say that. He did say that they will have to agree to it. BC will have to agree to it. Nobody in BC agrees to it, so right out the gate, the thing is dead in the water. Also, it is contingent on an immediate, near immediate, carbon tax price increase on all industry in Alberta, taking it from 95 to 100. It doesn't even matter the amounts. The amounts don't even matter because it's just going to keep ratcheting up. And people say, well, they could have just done that anyway, Frank. They were going to put those taxes up anyway. Do you realize that Saskatchewan unlawfully, that's the key word here, unlawfully removed the carbon tax from certain things, home heating, in Saskatchewan, unlawfully. They removed it. They got away with it. And now the thing is done away with. That's a model to follow. Quebec does all kinds of things that it wants to do. And when it gets into trouble, it just does them anyway. It uses the notwithstanding clause. They carve out their own destiny. These options are available to the Western provinces as well. If they only summoned the balls, if they only had the chutzpah to actually do it, to actually use their power in an appropriate way, in a protest against Ottawa. But once again, keeping unbroken the chain from every single premier in Alberta and every single premier in Saskatchewan is dedicated to this federation. They always bend over for Ottawa. They always end up surrendering. And that's what this is. It is surrender. Now, I could just speak unedited for 20 or 30 minutes and come straight from the heart, but I want to make sure that I say everything that needs to be said. First off, I want to remind you of the animosity that existed between Jason Kenney and Danielle Smith in the wake of Jason Kenney resigning in May of 2022 and Danielle Smith becoming leader in October of 2022. And this is a tweet I'm reading on screen for those of you who are listening, it only took 3 years for her to cut a deal with the Liberals that Kenney can applaud. Full circle in 3 years, but it's worse than just that. Not only is Jason Kenney supposedly her sworn enemy, the person she said had no sense, called out, did all this stuff, not only is he celebrating, but Nenshi, the head of the NDP, is celebrating too. That should tell you all you need to know. Carney is smiling like a Cheshire cat on stage because he knows he won. Ward Benedict says Jason Kenney in address seems appropriate to me. Rich says, not defending Smith or this MOU, just saying the focus must be on the referendum. And if the UCP blows apart over this, and if the referendum vote fails, there's a good chance the NDP could win the next election. Ooh, the big NDP boogeyman. Let's understand something. A potato could run against Nenshi, and it will win. Nenshi's not going to win. The NDP's weak. They're not dangerous as long as Nenshi's leader. Why? Because Calgary, having him as their former mayor, Calgary understands, and Calgary's the swing vote. You're not going to get anything out of Edmonton. We know how the rural ridings are going to vote. It doesn't matter how bad things get. They're going to vote for the UCP. Calgary's the swing. They know Nenshi. His days are numbered. I can't even believe they made him leader of the party. But I said, who cares? The surrender to Ottawa is real, and the NDP remains weak. Sitting on your hands and not calling this out for what it is doesn't help anything. But don't just take my word for it. Let's go to Kirk Lubimov. Good follow. He doesn't follow me yet, but maybe one day I will be rewarded with the grace of a follow. Here is a breakdown of the most important parts of Daniel Smith's deal with Mark Carney, a.k.a. MOU, the agreement on tax. Note he doesn't call it a pipeline deal. I like him already. Between Alberta and Canada. We'll make a pipeline a national interest project if one or more pipeline, clean electricity regulations will be suspended. The best part of the deal, not because it's bad policy, but because of carbon capture, etc. Oil and gas emissions cap won't be implemented, but it kind of is because of the methane and carbon capture requirements. It's all the same thing. It's all moving I's and crossed T's around on the document. The limitations are still there. It gets worse, of course. Tanker ban changes possible if everyone is in agreement. This is really the very final part, and only if the Major Projects Office doesn't approve it. Everybody has to agree. This is according to the agreement. So the people who have said that they will not agree over their dead bodies, it's already dead in the water, but it gets worse. Use Canadian steel in pipeline construction. Sounds pretty wonderful until you realize the pipeline's never going to get built. I mean, it's literally never going to get built. Work on nuclear strategy, so we're going to do more thinking. Increase the industrial carbon tax from 95 a ton to a minimum of 130 ton. If you can't do math, that's somewhere in the neighborhood of a 35 or 40% increase. That will happen. That's like the only thing that's guaranteed in the whole thing is that Alberta industries get less competitive. There's nobody... Let's dismiss Pierre Poilievre for a minute. Let's talk about that. Because with the provinces out, with Daniel Smith not leading on this carbon nonsense issue, with Daniel Smith not leading when it comes to opposition to Ottawa for all the tough rhetoric, she literally just surrendered. She surrendered with a smile on her face. So now we know the premiers have not got Alberta's back or Saskatchewan's back because let's be honest, with Daniel Smith out, do you really think the Sask party in Saskatchewan is going to do anything bold? We're kind of following along here. We have done some of our own things, but maybe I'm just filled with doubt right now watching the scale of this surrender that Scott Moe will actually step up and represent Saskatchewan with some real oppositional strength to Ottawa if he has to stand alone. So if you love Canada and you love the idea of Canada, you're kind of back to Pierre Poilievre, and the CPC is your best bet. It's not my best bet, but it's your best bet. And the way that the only thing that Pierre can do now is oppose everybody. Absolutely everybody. You have to oppose the Liberals, and you have to oppose the Conservative governments all across this country, and you have to carve out a brand new message and a brand new space in Canadian politics. Do you really think they're going to do that? The video I made the other day where I highlighted the video that was put out on Pierre Poilievre's channel where he contrasted the campaign Carney with Prime Minister Carney. And I used that video as a backdrop to point out that Mark Carney can say one thing and another thing with ease. And it wasn't to promote Poilievre's politics, because in that video, another thing that was embedded was a soft defense of Doug Ford. So he calls out, Pierre Poilievre and the CPC call out Mark Carney for apologizing to Donald Trump over the stupidity of Doug Ford's messaging. So in effect, the Conservative Party of Canada supports Doug Ford, even though Ford left them out to dry. Do you know how weak that is? I would have never done that. If I was the strategist, if I was the one putting together the video, I would never do a single thing to even subtly hint that I care one damn about Doug Ford, the betrayer of Ontario. Not just the betrayer of Ontario, but the man who's done more than anybody else to aggravate the Americans. The CPC message at this point seems to be, if you elected us, we would have gone to war with the United States, which is the exact wrong message. So back to the point. In order for the CPC to have space now, they've got to oppose Ford. They've got to oppose Smith. They have to carve out this brand new space, and they have to completely change tack and message, which I don't think they'll do. But now Daniel Smith is glad-handing with Mark Carney. They're best friends. Doug Ford is meeting with Carney, would never meet with Pierre Poilievre. These people have betrayed the federal conservative movement, and the only space for the Conservative Party of Canada to operate and for Pierre Poilievre to operate is in opposition to all of them. I don't have much hope of that happening. But now that we have successfully digressed, let's get back to Lubinov, and we're going to reread that. Increase the industrial carbon tax from 95 a ton to a minimum of 130 a ton. I know I said ton. Doesn't really matter. It's all nonsense. So we have a guaranteed tax increase. That's coming, and Smith has accepted it. Net zero by 2050. Look, folks, this needs to be abandoned by everybody, by Daniel Smith, by Doug Ford, by Pierre Poilievre. There's no sense to it. Canada bankrupting itself, which is what we're doing. We're creating a very uncompetitive environment by signing on to all this nonsense, by Daniel Smith signing this tax agreement, which it is a tax agreement. Let me highlight one more thing very briefly. Ron Butler, the Angry Mortgage Podcast. I really like this guy. I like him so much that I worry about his health. I want him to keep living. But he puts out a video, and the title of the video is Wrong is Wrong. And he says in the description, and I was wrong. I said many times there would never be a new pipeline in Canada under the Carney government. But now we have an announcement. Congrats to the Prime Minister. What are you doing, Ron? You missed the point. There's no pipeline here. It's a myth. It's a promise. It will never be delivered. And I said, Ron, man, you're not wrong. I actually made a comment, which I rarely do on other people's channels. Read the text again. It's not a pipeline deal. It's a tax deal. Why are smart people not getting what just happened? It's not just smart people on the right that seem to be missing that there's no pipeline promised here, that this pipeline will never be built. It's also people on the left, and we'll dispense with that right now. People on the left think that Mark Carney betrayed the green agenda. He didn't. He got everything that he wanted. The only people who didn't get what they wanted were the Albertans. The green agenda, as he sets it out, which I think will be abandoned, that's a separate issue. But the outrage on the left about a new pipeline, folks, calm down. There's never going to be a pipeline on the right and on the left. It seems like there's only about 20% of the public and the influencer class and everybody else that actually understands what happened yesterday. The 80% are arguing about something that didn't even happen. And just so you understand, I'm not throwing shade at Mr. Butler. I encourage you to actually check out his podcast. He swears a bit more than me. He's kind of angry, but he tells the truth. He's just, this is a miss. He was not wrong. And anyway, back to Mr. Lubinov. We were talking about net zero by 2050 and how that's just a terrible idea we all need to abandon. I don't know why we're talking in this language. The world is moving on, and we are not. We are just making ourselves more uncompetitive while we're about to lose the USMCA, while we're in a trade war with the United States, mostly because of our own mouths, and we're fighting the Chinese at the same time. Canada's in a bad way, but again, digression. That's basically what I do around here. We have another headline article from your mainstream media saying Canada avoids recession as GDP climbs in the third quarter. This is gaslighting by your mainstream media that is subsidized by the government. We're in recession. People are suffering. Delinquencies are climbing. Insolvencies are climbing. People are losing values on their houses. Retirements are going up in smoke. Purchasing power is dying. Inflation is still underway and way above target at the same time as quantitative easing has begun again, and they don't even talk about it. December 16th, the Bank of Canada is going to start printing money and buying treasuries right from the government, depositing billions of dollars in the government of Canada's bank account so that they can spend on whatever pet projects Carney wants to inflate the value of his portfolio and the value of his friends as billionaires sell their stocks off in AI and plow into Brookfield. We're being gaslit. I talked about in a previous video, go back and find it. There's a lot of videos, but my God, I talk about the GDP, how fake the GDP is, how manipulated it is, how much of the GDP is government spending, how much of the GDP is actually the black market, how much of the GDP is something called fictional rent, which is rent that people don't even pay that's in the GDP. So if you own your house outright, 30% of Canadians own their houses outright. There's a computation for the rent that you would have paid if you still paid rent. That's factored into the GDP. Your backyard garden, there's a figure for that too. It's insane. But this is what they use to say that everything is hunky-dory in Canada. As we know, capital flight is underway. Billions of dollars are leaving this country because of the harsh regulatory environment, because of the high tax environment. And what happens? In this backdrop, Daniel Smith signs an agreement where the only guarantee is an increase in the industrial carbon tax, making Alberta further less competitive. Back to Lubinov. Pathways Plus. Use the uneconomical carbon capture. We'll be building the largest one out there. And this is, it's an incomplete sentence because we've moved on. And this is talking about all the conditions on this pipeline. You will have to use the uneconomical carbon capture. What's the calculation on how much that will increase the price of a barrel of heavy crude out of Alberta, which already has its disadvantages to even get it in a pipeline? We have to import oil from somewhere else. How much money will that add to our cost in an environment where our oil prices are moving down? Incredibly repressed. It's great if you're buying gas, but the economics don't make any sense. Methane reduction from the oil industry by 75% below 2014 levels by 2035. Another little fly in the ointment. It's not just net zero by 2050, but you have to lower methane reduction from the oil industry by 75% by 2035. This is what she agreed to. Strong arms co-ownership with First Nations. That'll go well. Backed by taxpayers. So again, you foot the bill, just like you're footing the bill for Carney extracting maximum value from Canada. Everybody sees it. Everything is carbon tax and carbon capture dependent, reading Lubinov again. Canada and Alberta agree that the Pathways project is also a prerequisite to the approval, commencement, and continued construction of the bitumen pipeline. So, in summary, Kirk says, so Mark Carney got all the green agenda items he wanted, with Alberta's industries facing even more costs, not just the carbon tax increase, but all the costs of all the carbon capture nonsense, reduction in methane, making it completely uncompetitive. They're up there smiling and they're clapping like seals, and the UCP is worried about Nenshi as if he's the one that's destroying Alberta's future right now. Really, it's Danielle Smith and her leadership. Taxpayers will reward First Nations beyond the hook for all the risk, and maybe Alberta will get a pipeline one day, possibly by 2040, maybe, which will be phased out by 2050. If someone in the private sector wants to step up and still deal with all the headaches with final peanuts hitting taxpayer pockets, so still dependent on that foreign capital, which is fleeing the country. I'm really trying not to swear today. Mark Carney already said that everyone, including BC and First Nations, will have to agree to it, though they have no veto. So you know, in multiple different ways, that this is never going to happen. This beyond amateur of a deal that surrenders Alberta to Ottawa and the United Nations, all because of desperation for ribbon cutting by politicians instead of just getting rid of bad policies and get building. The UCP annual general meeting started today, I believe, and this is supposed to be the optics supporting Danielle Smith's leadership. Now, I did say on my profile, I said I engaged in some hyperbole. I sincerely hope Danielle Smith gets fired this week. She can't get fired. There's not a mechanism. Not that I understand anyway. The deal she signed was a total betrayal of Alberta, but the AGM can be a total gong show. And that's what I hope happens. I hope she gets on stage and gets booed, because this is absolutely terrible. Now, I don't know where the tweet is. I'm not going to waste your time finding it. But there are people who say, well, it's just a memorandum of understanding, Frank. So she can just ignore those stipulations. She cannot do it. The same people who say it's just a memorandum of understanding, that it's not binding, also say it's a great deal to get a pipeline for Alberta. Well, geniuses, that means the pipeline's not binding either. The only thing that's binding is the carbon tax increase that's coming. How can we not understand that this is yet again, after all the nonsense, a spring and summer of tough rhetoric? We're right back where we started, with Alberta surrendering to Ottawa yet again, and the Albertan people are on the hook for it, and it sucks. It's terrible. The referendum is indeed important. And just to kind of bring this together for a minute, we'll even go to the big view, because I am going to speak from the heart here. I've been waiting. As much as I support a referendum, as much as I support the separatist cause, as much as I support the idea of independence or even statehood, as much as I've said and put on the record that the most dangerous thing to me is the status quo, which this reinforces. It's not just the status quo. This is an expansion, a flowering of the status quo. That we need to do something different. We need to pursue options. And as much as I've said that, I've been really hoping I've been praying even. Maybe you shouldn't pray for politicians. That the premiers, speaking specifically of Premier Smith and Premier MOU, would have the courage to lead in a different style. They certainly flirted with it. They were back and forth. The rhetoric goes one way, the rhetoric goes another way. I'd hoped that they would lead on this issue because it would be much easier if you had some kind of official support and endorsement for the idea of doing something different. Even just the support for the idea itself, as Quebec has demonstrated, can do wonders for your province's autonomy and your province's future. Quebec has shown how to win in this confederation, this rotten system that we all live under. And I had hoped that the politicians at the provincial level would do something. My hopes are dashed now. They've been cut apart, and thrown on the rocks, and sundered. Because even if this memorandum of understanding is not binding, it signals through the applause, through the smiles, through the glad handing, the intent. And there's no intent there to do anything different. So unfortunately, maybe fortunately, it's going to have to be done from the grassroots. It's going to have to be done on its own. It's going to have to be done by the people. There's going to need to be something new. Because someone else brought up a really good point that's absolutely true. And that is, I picked this up at random. It's not really a planned prop. This has been around in my life. This was my dad's. It's been around for a long time. But the clock is ticking on the timeline to do something different. There's an opening in history. There's an opportunity to maybe get outside help to do something different. But it's not going to last forever. And someone pointed out that Daniel Smith was the leader of the Wild Rose Party, something different. And in order to beat the NDP, remember that NDP boogeyman? And it was real. It was much realer in the days of Notley. She joined together and they formed the UCP, of which she eventually became the leader after the suffering that was endured under Jason Kenney. But like I said, we've come full circle. And the person that reminded me of this said this is the second time that Daniel Smith has betrayed the base of the UCP and betrayed the people of Alberta, because she betrayed the Wild Rose Party. So, are we getting it? Do we understand that there's no cavalry coming from on high? That the established power politics are absolutely on board with the status quo? How sad is it? I'll reiterate that the only hope that remains is that Pierre Poilievre will start opposing all of it. All of it. And it's not going to happen. I have no idea how he's going to spin this, but it's certainly not going to be the way that he needs to. So the people of the Western provinces need to keep building their grassroots movements, the Saskatchewan Prosperity Project, the Alberta Prosperity Project, heading towards the referendum, which, look, we may very well lose, but that doesn't mean that we don't keep building. Victory may not come quickly. I said this in yesterday's video, and it applies to these independence movements and these grassroots movements. I said it about the CPC. I said maybe they need to accept that they won't win the next election. They've already lost several with their strategy of trying to win the strategy that we're told we have to just keep blindly trusting and allow them to carry out, keeps losing. So maybe if they accepted that they're going to lose the next election, but they started today fighting hard, using their platform to make the arguments, they might be able to build something new and build a coalition, build on their base and expand it out and actually create the thing that could defeat this World Economic Forum, United Nations agenda, which they all are signed on to, now including Daniel Smith. I mean, it's not really a surprise. She's always supported net zero. We had hoped that she would abandon it. She clearly hasn't. She's doubled down on it with this memorandum of understanding. If they accepted that defeat in the next election might be inevitable, they could build a movement and win the next one. And you might say, well, that's too late. Well, look, it's already too late. Folks, we're heading off a cliff. No one seems to want to get off the bus. No one seems to want to go up and pull the driver away and try and take control of the wheel. There's no original thinking. No one's thinking outside the box. No one's leading outside the box. We have a vacuum of leadership in this country. And it's going to have to be filled by the people. The system has enslaved you. You have no property rights. Your charter rights can be taken away at the whim of a government. The system that emanates from Ottawa. Why does leadership in the provinces, other than in Quebec, bow down before this system, which robs everybody of their agency, their autonomy, and their fundamental human rights. It's disgusting. And the only people that are going to save the people are the people. I'm Frank Vaughn. I appreciate every single one of you who like, share, and do all the things and support the channel via the donate link. I appreciate all of you. And I'll see you in the next one.